Hello, everybody. I'm Shane.
And I'm Ken.
And welcome to episode 3 of GemTalk.
So today we are going to talk about the episode Barnmates.
Yes, so just as a bit of a preamble, we know what happened in France. Yes, we know about the spoilers, and we are dirty, rotten heathens, and we did watch them all, as soon as we could.
The moment it was cyberspace possible.
Yes. But out of respect for those who may wish to not be spoiled, for episodes that will air beyond, today, we are going to instead stick to the one episode per week. And, if you are interested in hearing our opinions on the episodes that have been spoiled, you're just going to have to wait. I'm sorry.
And our discussion today should be from the point of view of only seeing Barnmates. So we're going to try to not pull in material from Hit the Diamond or Stephen Floats.
And with that, let's go. So, Barnmates was an interesting character study episode, I think.
Yeah. We have two new, potentially, crystal gems. Peirdot, who calls herself a crystal gem at this point, so we have to believe it. And Lapis, who is still just recovering from her long fusion situation with Jasper. The three main crystal gems out of the picture until the very end.
Yeah, pretty much non-existent for this episode.
Yeah, and so we get to see Lapis and Peirdot interact with each other, finally.
Yes, and I think it's really interesting that this episode is still part of the Peirdot redemption arc, really. I think this is probably the penultimate step in Peirdot's complete conversion, because I think if she can win Lapis Lazuli over, all we need after that point is to actually see her turn a hand against Yellow Diamond, and that will pretty much seal her spot as a crystal gem.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the saying, if you learn something, if you really want to know that you've mastered something, you teach it to somebody else. So, Steven's converted Peirdot. Yeah. Now, Peirdot's trying to convert Lapis Lazuli, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, she's interested in being her friend, but she's trying to use all the tricks of the trade, so to speak, that she's learned from Steven and continues to learn throughout this particular episode.
It's like another Coach Steven episode.
It's an interesting point because, considering the song from that episode,
to be strong in the real
way, that's probably more about that. Yeah.
So, interesting things that happen in this episode. One of the things that obviously stands out very prominently is Lapis's desire to be left alone. Though she does sort of focus that mostly on Peirdot, I wonder if her desire to be left alone isn't just because she's angry at Peirdot, but because she spent so much time fused with Jasper that the concept of being alone at all is attractive to her.
Yeah, it could be that her initial excuse that she was angry at Peirdot because Peirdot brought her back to Earth and all that, while true, might just be cover for the fact that she just wants to be left alone. She said to Steven in the very beginning, I thought I'd be here by myself.
Yeah.
And instead, now Peirdot's here. Obviously, Lapis has no idea what's transpired in the last several episodes involving Peirdot, so it's understandable. Last time she saw Peirdot was a villain.
Yeah.
Was controlling her. Another person using her, and that seems to be a recurring theme with Lapis.
Yeah.
So, as far as the chronology of the episode, we start off with Peirdot with her tape recorder. It's funny that she's making notes for herself for how she's going to try to win over Lapis. And two things immediately become funny about that. One, she still refers to herself as Facet 5.
Yes.
Which I think is really funny. And two, she's doing it right in front of Lapis. as though she can't hear her.
Well, you can take the gem out of the facet, but you can't take the facet out of the gem.
Ooh.
That's deep. Or not really. I'm not sure.
But anyway, she still uses the tape recorder as a crutch, as a substitute to her limb enhancers and her computer and all that.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, if you're an immigrant, for example, coming from another country, you still bring your culture with you. You still bring things that make you comfortable or remind you of home. So even though Peirdot's now an immigrant to the planet, she still wants something that reminds her of the comforts of home, because she knows she can't go back. So she has to find little pieces of it here to make her more comfortable.
Right, and that is a point, again, that she did bring up herself later on in the episode. This episode almost seems to be taking the tact of, if you haven't noticed these sub-themes by now, we're going to put them right in front of your face.
Lapidot? Lapidot's a sub-theme I can get behind.
Hey, I'm right there with you, but what I mean is, oh, look, they're both refugees. Oh, look, they're both trying to cope with being in this strange world that they never really wanted to call home, but I guess it's home now. I mean, this has been obvious, at least since the previous episode.
Yeah.
And now they're just like, slapping it in your face. Like, we're just going to say this now. So, if you haven't gotten it yet, here. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that comes across is the differences between Peirdot and Lapis Lazuli. Peirdot is logical.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault. Mm-hmm. She's logical. Lapis is much more emotional, and it's apparent in this episode that she's emotionally drained. Mm-hmm. Probably also from the Malachite
experience, yeah.
I just think of how she acted in Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem, and she had more energy about her. Mm-hmm. In these last two episodes, even when she later defeats the Roaming Eye, there was very little emotion on her.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that she's just been going through such an emotionally draining and tiring experience that there's nothing left for her to feel, and so she's kind of just acting on not only initial instinct, but also, since she is such an emotional character, if she does feel any sort of emotion, it's like taken up to 11. So she's angry at Peirdot. Not only is she angry, she's completely out of her mind angry. When she sees the Roaming Eye, she just doesn't have time for it. She doesn't have the emotional energy to deal with it. In fact, she doesn't even use very aggressive attacks. She flicks it and then smacks it.
And then she spikes it.
Yeah. So it's almost as if she's like, look, I've had enough. I can't deal with this right now, so I'm just going to put an end to it, if that's okay with you.
Right. So we have Peirdot's logic, Lapis's emotion, and these two things will be the conflict that goes on.
Drives the episode. I think that one of the things, another one of the underlying themes of the show, is that there are different ways to go through life, different perspectives, different ways to see a similar situation.
Yeah.
So this episode also uses a pretty well-known trope, which is dividing the shared space in half, literally, down to the point where Steven draws a line across the barn. And I'm honestly trying to remember which shows have done this in the past.
I swear, almost, at least for children's shows, almost every children's cartoon or sitcom has done this at some point.
I think the only one I can remember is Full House. I think they did that.
Yeah,
but
it's such a common trope. Always, the lesson at the end turns out to be that, you could try to force separation, but you can't change the fact that you're living together.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there's a lot of people in dorm rooms who attempt similar things. Maybe not literally putting a marker or a piece of tape down, but similar things I'm sure happen all the time. So it's very identifiable.
Yeah, and I've plenty of stories from personal experience to agree with that. But what I do appreciate something, when they split up the room, Peirdot makes note of two things that she kind of wants from Lapis's side. One's the propellers and the other's the paint cans. And then she takes a moment to actually indicate, oh wait, I really want those paint cans. I'll trade you something for them. And I think that that's interesting because the paint cans were actually what she used in place of her limb enhancers after Steven and the crew got rid of them, and then they were trying to make her feel more comfortable again.
Yeah, when she mentions those things particularly, you have to think, why does she mention those things particularly? The propellers, the paint cans. It's also of note that the paint cans that she may be referring to are the ones that Steven gave her, that he painted the fire on.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things. One, they are replacements for her limb enhancers. They're also she used them to attempt to fuse with Garnet.
Yes. Again, more hints at Lapidot. Just do it. God.
Well, for a very long time, we were like, we've seen Opal.
Yeah.
We've seen Sugalite.
Yeah.
But what's the fusion of Pearl and Garnet like?
As soon as I saw Weakest Sardonyx, I knew that that's what that was referring to. And my God, Sardonyx, you beautiful creature.
She's so articulated.
But
I'm just saying that we know, the fans know, fusion's a big part of the show. So they're going to use their phrase, fuse for special circumstances and only in emergencies or what have you. So they're going to save this for a special moment.
It's got to be when Yellow Diamond shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be the breaking point. Pun unintentional.
But we do have to build up to it, because it wouldn't mean as much if they're just like, hey, how you doing? Hey, let's fuse. I mean, that's not going to work, So they're going to...
You know what I just thought of? The propellers might also remind her of her limb enhancers, because she used to turn her fingers into a
helicopter.
Propeller.
Yeah.
That might just be me reading too much into Peirdot.
Well, it's apparent that she misses the limb enhancers, and I think this is something I actually wanted to bring up later on, but it seems apparent to me that Peirdot doesn't have a weapon. Yeah. Or she hasn't learned how to produce one from her gem like the crystal gems do.
Yeah.
Her weapon, quote unquote, was her computer.
Yeah.
I mean, she had increased height. She probably could gain information from the computer as well as control things with it. She could use the fingers as a gun of some kind.
Yeah.
So, her limb enhancers were everything. Without them, she's just a gem.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of questions involved with that. There was a point in time when I wondered if only crystal gems could summon weapons, almost as if that was something that they just learned to do as a rebellion.
That just made me think of something.
What's that?
If Pearl and Rose learned about fusion from Garnet,
yes,
maybe they learned about summoning weapons from Pearl's ability to summon things from her gem.
Well, see...
Like, maybe they taught each other how to do these various things.
Maybe. I know that the rubies don't summon their weapons in the answer, but Jasper does have a weapon. Jasper does summon a weapon. So, I don't know if, again, that's something that they sort of pulled from Rose's...
Or it's a skill only taught to warrior gems, and Peirdot's not a warrior gem, so she would have to have it taught to her.
Alternatively, a lot of people think that her visor might be her weapon. And because you've never seen her without it, so she may just constantly have that visor present, and who knows if that has any effect on her vision, her sight, anything at all, or if it's just cosmetic.
Yeah, I mean, it could be cosmetic. As you pointed out, we didn't see her reform. The only thing I can imagine the visor being good for, aside from maybe perhaps enhancing your vision, is being like a shield type of thing. Like, it's hard to break. Yeah. Or whatever.
Well, I mean, it might just give information, vitals, stuff like that.
Right, so you think it might have like a little HUD on it or something like that.
Think like Sailor Mercury.
Right. Or like Iron Man.
Yes.
Do that too.
If you want to take
two completely different references so everybody can get it.
Yes.
So throughout this episode, Lapis, her reactions, her attitude towards Peirdot, they seem almost cruel. And I find myself as an audience member looking at Lapis and going, really? Are you really going to be that cold, that callous, that angry when you can see that Peirdot's doing her best? I know Steven says this directly later on, but early on when I was watching, as she gives her the card, and you don't see her reaction because it kind of jump cuts to afterwards, and Peirdot's talking about why it didn't work. But the whole time I'm like, Lapis, why are you being so cruel? And I thought about it a little bit more. And I determined that it could be because I'm sympathizing so much with Peirdot.
Yeah.
I want Peirdot's angle to be the right one. I want her to win in this little contest of wills. So I see what Lapis is doing in a negative light.
Yeah.
So I try to flip that around and be like, as you mentioned earlier, Lapis wants to be alone. Peirdot's not letting her be alone.
Yes.
Go away.
Yeah. There still needs to be some time spent separated in order to get over the trauma that occurred. I do agree that since we're seeing it from Peirdot's perspective, yes, we've seen Peirdot go through her trials, her tribulations, her changes, her evolutions, but Lapis has not seen that. So all that she knows is the last time I saw you, you dragged me back to Earth. So, as far as I know, you're a terrible person. But I think towards the end of the episode, where Lapis steps up and kind of protects everybody, that I think they're going to skip over the fact that they need some time apart, and they're going to just slide into Lapis recognizing that Peirdot is probably a good guy and doesn't need any further trials in order to be accepted.
Yeah, and it could be that when there's an emergency present, okay, I can step up, I can do something. I'm not going to just ignore it. Mm-hmm. But if there's not something special going on, then I need my alone time.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that we'll get to a point where, I don't know, maybe they can create some new symbology or whatever, but if the two new crystal gems can get their own rooms in the temple, of course, that would mean you would need a 7-pointed star.
Oh my god, that fusion would be so unstable.
You know, it's almost like the barns become like the satellite temple.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think all Peirdot needs to do is show Lapis Lazuli her suite, and then we can...
Oh my goodness.
There's so many weird lines that Peirdot gets in this episode, and I think that...
She can get away with it because she's effectively a foreigner.
Yeah, but I think that she's seen way too many episodes of Camp Pining Hearts that... She takes on this strange, almost, like, seductive voice in this episode where she's like, I got your number, and... Yeah, I know.
Yeah. When she said that, I was like, where did Amethyst come from?
Yeah.
That sounds like something Amethyst would say.
Yeah, maybe she's getting too many negative influences.
I also wanted to point that Lapis is the only gem we know of that can just straight up fly. Mm-hmm. Of course, I mean, I've seen Garnet jump far, you know, and the others kind of do that, you know, Superman style, just gonna jump, you know what I mean? But she has wings, and she uses them to escape a problem, to escape a situation. She knows that the top of the silo is relatively safe, so there she goes. You know, whenever things become a little bit too much, she just flies away. I can imagine there's probably a lot of people that wish they could just do that. You know?
I'm pretty sure that, again, a lot of what we're seeing in Lapis is somebody that's learning how to cope with having just left a negative situation that they had been a part of for a very long time. And there are two common ways to address your problems. One is to face them, and the other is to run away. And seeing as Lapis just managed to get out of this negative event, her mind's probably immediately stuck in the runaway mode. Again, since gems are programmed in specific ways, that maybe Lapis Lazuli's, again, if they are spies, like you had mentioned before, or had theorized before, maybe their programming is to just run away when they're in trouble or whenever they're faced with something they don't like.
Yeah, Lapis continues to look like, for lack of a better term, like a wounded animal, and is behaving as such. She just wants to get away from everybody, and she lashes out at people when they invade her personal space, physically or socially. So we want to move up to the greeting card incident, and we have a wonderful internal fan art by Steven.
He needs his own Tumblr page.
Yeah. So we have this wonderful, like, little, looks like a third grader would draw it type of drawing. And
with no noses.
With no noses, or fingers.
Or fingers.
And anybody who has ever tried their hands at actually drawing humanoid characters knows hands suck.
Yeah, I'm sure there are entire artistic classes just on learning how to draw hands. It's terrible.
Yeah, and it's not just in like hand-drawn animation. Animating and drawing hands in like 3D modeling is also very difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of tiny things going on in there.
A lot of bones, a lot of joints, and while the human hand can be in a whole lot of different positions, there's so many other ones that hit that uncanny valley. And
yeah, because if you draw a finger in even the slightest direction incorrectly, it looks like so wrong.
Suddenly alien hands.
Yeah, suddenly somebody just snapped a finger in the wrong direction.
Yeah, but anyway, Steven has Peirdot fill out the inside of the card, and he tells her to just be sincere. And once again, we see Peirdot's unfortunate tendency to be overtly logical.
Yeah.
So she says, you were a good informant, and that's a sincere compliment. And she just doesn't understand. Like, she doesn't filter what she's saying through an emotional context.
Yeah, and I think, again, that to play both sides, devil's advocate, that Lapis also doesn't take the opportunity to understand that this is how Peirdot speaks, that this is actually a genuine compliment, and the fact that she's saying it so directly is just the way that she communicates.
Yeah, like something I've noticed that when thinking of a situation, you tend to assume that everybody will react to that situation the same way that you would. Mm-hmm. And when they don't react the same way that you would, it makes you feel like they're wrong somehow. Yeah. It's difficult to get over that. A lot of psychology in today's podcast. Of course, the letter doesn't work. And, of course, it can't possibly be anything that Peirdot did wrong.
Well, she's
perfect. It was
perfect.
the lack of noses.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, which I'm partially curious if that's supposed to be an allusion to quote-unquote anime style, Japanese animation style, because in a lot of anime, the noses are very minor. Sometimes they're just a dot or a very minuscule line in the otherwise eye-consumed heads of anime characters.
Well, you know, you gotta make room with his eyes
somewhere. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a subtle nod to anime or just another nod to artists trying to break out in their own style, and Steven's style just happens to be something so oblique as leaving out noses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny. Steven is almost like the Renaissance man artist. Yeah. Like, he writes music, here he's doing art, and even though it's childish art, when she asks him about the nose, he's like, that's just my style right now. Like, he understands that aspect of art.
Well, he gets a lot of that from his father. Because remember, Greg not only is a musician, but also is an artist. He did that whole Water Witch, to make another reference to Mirror Gem.
Oh, yeah.
Cover art.
Yeah, which was very reminiscent of a lot of cover arts from like the 80s and such.
Also, that stellar, beautiful cover art for Let Me Drive My Van Into Your Heart. Mm-hmm. That was just perfect. It's just a picture of him leaning up against the band.
Oh, and let's not forget about the whole Guitar Dad shirt thing. That was really good too. And it was, again, Steven's somewhat childish style of art. But his art skills might not be as well developed as his musical skills, but, you know, he's always there with the artistic bent on things.
Yeah, and I think that music was something that brought Greg and Rose together. So music is something that's part of who Steven is. It's how his mother and father met, so it sort of makes sense that he has that.
It's probably deeply embedded in, like, his psyche or his soul or what have you. Yeah, considering that he wrote the theme song when he was barely talk straight, which makes me feel like maybe he was at the point where he hadn't even gotten all of his teeth in yet. You know?
He does have that one, like, gap tooth, so either he hadn't grown all of his teeth in, or one of them had just fallen out.
Yeah, something like that, but he was so tiny. Yeah. I mean, for somebody who looks like they're about 4 or 5 to write that particular song, it's quite something.
Yeah, we're talking like 16th century musical savants type stuff there.
Yeah, a little Mozart, you know. So again, during the greeting card incident, Lapis is up on the silo. Peirdot's calling her, and she's up there like, oh, leave me alone. Looking like some teenager that you're trying to wake up, and they're just like, go away.
Another one of the images that has spawned a million GIFs on Tumblr.
Oh, really?
Where her eyes are closed, and then she hears Peirdot's voice, and then her eyes snap
turns
open.
over. And,
well, specifically, it's like because she looks fairly peaceful while she's resting there, but then when she hears Peirdot's voice, her eyes snap open, and that's been used a lot.
But the moment Steven calls for her, she's like, "Oh, okay," and then she goes down. I think you had mentioned to me earlier.
Yeah, I had a slight theory that gem society works on a hierarchy. This is highly evident from Peirdot, that certain gems just obey other gems because of power, size, capability, whatever. And Steven is, as far as the gems are concerned, rose quartz. Now, the crystal gems, maybe they've learned to identify Steven as a separate entity, but when Jasper shows up the first time, she immediately sees the gem and thinks it's Rose, just starts referring to Steven as Rose.
Yeah, that can be explained by the fact that every time a gem gets poofed, it reforms, and its choice of form when it does do that is completely up to itself.
Yeah.
Now, so far, we've only seen gems reform into bodies that are very similar. Because that body is part of their identity, is my thought there. So there's Steven, who looks way different than Rose ever looked. And that's probably what triggered Jasper to say, you know,
what
like,
happened
what did you do, you know?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if there's some sort of like an aura type of effect that these gems have, or just an instinctual, almost like ant-like process where Lapis and Peirdot know that Steven is a higher ranking gem, or that Rose was a higher ranking gem than they, so they almost immediately fall in line whenever he's present. Not only would that explain Peirdot's capability of switching sides so quickly, but it would also explain why Lapis would be so willing to immediately jump whenever Steven even so much as steps into frame. Now, a lot of this can be explained away by the fact that Steven showed both of them kindness and care and consideration, but I still can't help but wonder if there's something going on with the fact that since gems are so hierarchically minded, if that somehow comes into play to how they treat Steven.
Yeah, I can see that. When Steven first released Lapis from the mirror, and then she took the ocean and she was trying to go to space with it, like Steven's fighting her. She produces a water Steven, and they're fighting. She wasn't showing much deference to Steven at that point.
But she was also still cracked then.
True. She also had a very negative feelings toward the crystal gems. Rose was a member of the crystal gems, or the leader of the crystal gems, so she could have started off having those same negative feelings towards Steven, seeing him as Rose. Yeah. And actually, that kind of makes sense, because now that he's talked to her, he healed her gem, she sees him as a different being.
Person, yeah.
But still a quartz.
Yeah.
Still a rose quartz. And whatever rank and privilege comes with that. That could definitely be something.
Yeah.
So, now we move on to friendship attempt number 2, which is the pool incident. God. Steven says, well, why don't you give her a gift, something that she would like? And she sits there and thinks, and Peirdot, in her way, immediately goes to, well, what are lapis lazulis typically, stereotypically, I would even say, prone to like? And she says they like water and flying. And I can't hear that combination, water and flying, and not think Pokemon.
Yes.
It's really funny.
It does sound a lot like it would be 4 times weak to electric.
I made the reference last week to water and flying being a blue thing in Magic.
Yeah.
And Lapis is blue, and hey, that looks like a reference.
It all fits together.
So she makes a pool out of the hole that they drilled for the cluster thing. Then they bring over Lapis. I think I noticed that because Peirdot was already in the pool. Mm-hmm. In a little inner tube. And I think she realized that Steven's the only one's going to get her down off the silo anyway, so he just went and did it.
Yeah.
And then Peirdot tries to play things so cool, and it's weird because she doesn't usually act that way.
Yeah.
And now I think I know why she sounds like Amethyst, because she's probably emulating Amethyst when she says that. Because H2, oh my gosh, really? Like, again, something I would expect Amethyst to say.
Yeah.
But
she did have a book of jokes and other things, so maybe...
That is true.
Maybe she picked up a book of, like, how to be cool in 3 easy steps.
Yeah, right. And she didn't understand the chicken crossing the road joke, so she asked Amethyst to turn into a chicken.
You know, how did they fill that hole with water?
I don't know.
I didn't even think about that until just now.
Let's assume that there's a hose and
somewhere
near that barn. It's funny because it looked like he was in the silo, but silos are used for storing grain, not for storing water. So, yeah, I don't know, but they did it.
Yeah.
I want to know how they filled or sealed that flipping hole, because that hole went all the way down the center of the earth.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that Peirdot could build something that they could, push down there that would seal off the hole.
But, she makes effectively a pool.
Yeah.
Assuming that Lapis is going to like it. And oh boy.
Does she not like it?
Does she give the verbal smackdown on that one?
Yes, I think that for a very long time, one of my favorite phrases is going to be, water was the tomb. Her face, so good.
Yeah, that was probably the most intense monologue I think I've ever heard in the whole series.
Yeah, it's very intense.
Yeah, and I think it makes it even more intense because everything before it had been so lighthearted.
Yeah.
And happy and jovial, and all of a sudden, boom! No, this is real.
Yeah.
We're gonna get real. And it verifies that her issue right now is dealing with Malachite.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole experience, that's why she's feeling the way that she is. Then she ends it. It's like, they're really good at the pacing, at really smoothing that pacing curve, because all of a sudden this is very dark, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And then she kind of takes it out by going, I'm taking a break from water right now. Like you would expect a teenager to say. Like the tone was very similar. Like, I'm normally into water, but I'm taking a break from water right now. You know?
Water's so yesterday.
Yeah, like really, you know, and stuff, and like that, and it would just kind of like put a little humorous note at the end of that,
and then she just takes off.
Yeah, again, you know, this episode should just be called "Lapis Talks About Her Feelings."
That, or Lapis just nopes right out of there.
Yeah. So okay, giving Lapis something that she would like isn't going to work. Let's give her something that Peirdot likes.
Yes, and specifically, Steven says, give her a part of yourself. And again, maybe I'm digging too deeply here, but I see some more potential hints at fusion, because giving her a part of yourself is kind of like giving her your gem. You can fuse it together, you can make Lapidot happen.
According to Garnet, you have the light that is contained within your gem, and to fuse, you have to be willing to share that light with another being.
Confirmed. Ship it.
Lapidot, it's happening. Barring that, we move right on to Camp Pining Hearts.
Yes.
Which, now that you mention it, makes me think of something. When Garnet, in log date, I forget the numbers, but when Garnet's trying to explain to Peirdot why she's fused all the time, it's after Peirdot had seen the Camp Pining Hearts videos.
And she suggests giving that to Lapis.
Right. And Garnet explains that Ruby and Sapphire are like the two characters that she already shipped herself in that series. So it's all like doubling back on itself.
I just want it to happen. Okay, so
Except season 5 is garbage.
I'm calling it now. There's going to be an episode that we do. There's going to be a GemTalk after the episode where Lapidot happens. And the first, 5 minutes is just going to be me, squealing happily in the background.
It'll be like, hi, I'm Ken. And in the background is Shade. And welcome to GemTalk.
All right.
Squeeze! But, oh my goodness. I'm just glad that they called back to it, because it was an interesting part of that previous episode, and it was an important part of Peirdot's conversion to being a crystal gem. But that's not going to work, because I don't know if she only has season 5, or if that's just the one that she wanted to give, and that one's the, quote, garbage one, and is that being only half sincere with the gift, or is that really the only season that she has?
I think it's the only season she has.
Because, the joke in log date number was she watched the one episode over and over again. How you can make an entire relationship chart from watching one episode is beyond me, but she's pretty intelligent, so we'll just leave it at that. She decides instead to give her the tape recorder.
Yes.
And this was the famous spoiled scene that we saw months ago.
Yeah.
Of Peirdot's trying to give a little gift to Lapis, and Lapis doesn't seem happy about it. What's going on here?
Yeah, but
now we finally know.
I do appreciate the fact that it shows Peirdot is learning, because she's trying to think of something that would be important enough to give to Lapis. And yes, it does happen in that comical sense where, it was the thing that was right in front of my face the whole time. But still, she's so willing to give up what she feels most comfortable with, what's most important to her, because she recognizes, this gave me comfort when I was in a similar situation, so maybe it'll give you comfort in the same situation. And then, once again, Lapis just tosses it right back in her face in several pieces.
Yeah, I'm going to back up there a little bit and state that we mentioned early in the episode that Peirdot starts off with the tape recorder, and we note that this is probably her most prized possession.
Yeah.
So here she is willing to give up her most prized possession in order to make amends or to win Lapis over.
Yeah.
And as you said, Lapis rejects it. She crushes it. Gems are pretty strong.
Yeah.
You know? And then Peirdot does the last thing you can do as a person, even in trying to pursue a friendship. She's willing to effectively sacrifice herself.
Yeah.
Because she says, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. Lapis says, go away. She goes away.
Temporarily.
Well, yes, but Peirdot wanted to live in the barn. She wanted to stay there. She wanted to, as we thought earlier, convert it into a lab.
Yeah.
Right? Everything about her positive experiences on Earth are in that barn. It's very important to her. And
she was willing
Lapis
to just...
told her to leave, and she was going to go.
Yeah.
I imagine she probably would have gone back to the temple,
Probably.
I guess. But that's like, talk about Peirdot learning. Like, that is the ultimate thing. If it'll make you happy that I completely inconvenience myself, I'll do it. Whoa.
Yeah. So I think that if it hasn't been confirmed already that Peirdot is pretty much converted, I still think that there's going to be a bit of a stand between her and Yellow Diamond, and I want to see that. Just aside from being a Peirdot fan, I think that that's going to be her ultimate test. Yeah, you can say that you're part of the Resistance when your ex-commander is millions of light years away, but when she's standing right in front of you, do things stay the same?
Yeah, and it's also an unknown thing that it's easy to stick to your guns and stick to your opinions and whatever when you're surrounded by people who agree with your opinions, or you're surrounded by, or you're in a non-threatening situation. Yeah. But when those opinions and feelings are threatened, are you willing to stick to them, or are you going to go along to get along? Now, we've seen Lapis kind of do the go along to get along thing in Jailbreak, sometimes, but not always, because we had message received. Yeah. That's why she's such a great rogue character. The thing is, Peirdot is fine being a crystal gem when there's only crystal gems on the planet. But if Homeworld comes en masse to Earth again, it's going to be difficult.
You know what that just made me think of? And this may be reaching a little far beyond our imposed limits, but I'm not going to say how. What if Yellow Diamond came to Earth with a bunch of Peidots? Because Peirdot has been the one most ready to remind people that gems are not unique. She refers to Pearl as just a pearl, that she's one of many pearls, that pearls are just servants.
She refers to other gems in the plural all the time.
Yeah, she indicates that amethysts are warriors. She indicates that
lapis lazuli's like water and flying. Yeah.
But we've only ever seen Peirdot referred to as an individual. She maintains her individual personality.
In Gem Drill, when they're going down and she mentions the periodotite, the magma type stuff they're going through, is the only time I've ever seen her mention Peidots.
What Peidots are made from. Yeah, that's true. But I still think it would be a very interesting situation, now that she's becoming more individualized, what it would be like to suddenly face down an entire army of what she used to be.
Yeah, that is definitely something to look forward to. So, Peirdot runs away, and she's not coming back.
Until she does.
And then she's coming back.
But not of her own volition, not because she wants to.
Right.
But because she's the number one most anti-Homeworld wanted gem.
It's kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah. That's the other thing. There's that touch of
humanity.
Narcissism about her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because I still think that she feels that she's important, or she feels that she is better than the crystal gems in some way. Maybe not morally, but like Peirdot is always fighting to try to prove her superiority in some sense. See the robot battling, where maybe it was just an affront that Pearl was effectively stepping on her toes in her domain.
Engineering department, yeah.
But Peirdot's always trying to put herself, even superficially, slightly above everyone else. Like when she was telling the story about how they defeated the cluster, quote unquote defeated.
And she was saying that she had done this and she had done that. Only to talk about Steven's feelings. Yes, but when it comes down to the moment where the thing got bubbled, she didn't understand what had happened.
Yeah.
So she tried to get it from Steven, and we already said all that earlier.
Yes.
But, so in comes the roaming eye, which seems to be a callback to the Red Eye from the second episode.
Yeah, when I first saw the teaser for Barnmates, I thought that that's what it was, just a redesigned Red Eye since Homeworld had become so much more advanced.
Yeah, but not more advanced than it was during Laser Light Cannon. I mean, only about, roughly 2 years have passed?
Well, again, we don't know how fast Homeworld's time goes as compared to Earth's.
Right. And this group of artists have been really good at staying internally consistent.
Except for the last episode where Peirdot and Lapis's hairs are enormous.
I did notice that Lapis's hair, especially, was all over the place.
Yeah, and it was a big thing online. People.
Well, I mean, we have noticed slightly different art styles because different artists do different episodes.
Yeah.
But in general, I mean, we know that there are reference sheets because we see them sometimes.
Yeah.
And I just want to point that out because the design of the Red Eye and the design of the Roaming Eye are similar, but not the same. And I doubt it would be a thing well, episode 2, we made it look like this, but now we got a really good reason to make it look like this, which, by the way, looks like Samus's helmet.
It does. It kind of does.
It's red with a triangular green area in the center, and I'm just like, it looks like Samus's head floating around. The thing definitely, it's ominous. And did the Red Eye shine like a spotlight thing? I don't remember.
I would have to go back and watch Laser Light Cannon again. All I remember about the old Red Eye is when it opens, it kind of unfurls in that
like an
hatch
aperture
sort of way, and then there's the aperture eye.
So the other thing is, I remember as the Red Eye got closer and closer,
it
started having that gravity
force
effect, that sort of thing you see in DBZ all the time, where the rocks and stuff start
floating up towards it,
and all that. Which, if we're going to stay internally consistent, would mean that the Red Eye would have to be so much more massive than the Roaming Eye was.
Yeah.
And the Crystal Gems said that the Red Eye was just there to scout, to inspect.
Yeah, and another note on that whole gravitational pull thing. I mean, liberties had to have been taken because, Amethyst gets hurled directly at it and just falls right off. So,
by the way, that was my earliest gag that really made me laugh.
Yeah, that is a really good one.
Really made me laugh. I loved that. Whee, pop, splash. I think I'm making a dent in it. Woo! I'm like, oh my god. And of course, this is the second episode. This is back when it's like, oh, okay, this is lighthearted, monster of the week.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff.
Before the show had a chance to grow into itself.
Yeah, and the rose cannons, which they made a point of bringing back in The Return, and firing all 4 of them, and it didn't even bother the gem ship hand, and all this stuff. So, we got the Roaming Eye, it comes in, it plays a little hide and seek, and I noticed while Peirdot is scared out of her mind, when they go into the barn, and Steven's concerned, and there's Lapis with a deadpan look on her face. Like, whatever. Eventually, it focuses in on Peirdot, and then it's 1 eye. Then it's 5 eyes.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what that was about when they split up into... I don't know if it was splitting or if it was multiplying or what was going on there. But Lapis, completely unflappable at this point, like we said before, just passively destroys the thing.
Yes, but just before that, Peirdot is, again, frightened out of her mind. She obviously... This is where I realized she doesn't have a weapon.
Yeah.
She has no real way of defending herself aside from maybe punching something at some point. But if her real strength is her engineering, then she has to go build herself like a weapon, like a ray gun or something,
Yeah, and to be fair, if I remember correctly, in the episode where she gets popped out of the bubble and reforms, she slaps Steven, and he's like, ow, that hurts. And she's like, oh, it does? And keeps doing it. So it might be possible that she doesn't even know what fighting is.
And she did put that cannon on the gem drill.
Yeah.
So she can construct weapons.
Yeah.
And hook them up to N64 controllers. But Steven steps up, and I'll protect you. And here I'm totally expecting this thing to shoot some kind of beam, and here comes Steven's shield and all this kind of stuff. And nope, up steps Lapis. And then, as you said before, flicks it and spikes it using the water from the lake that was put there earlier.
Thank you, Peirdot.
Yes. So the question at hand is, did she step up because she finally decided she was going to protect Peirdot? Or did she step up because she wanted to prevent Steven from being hurt or injured or anything like that?
Yeah, and I mean, it could be both. It could be that Lapis, maybe out of personal investment, sees something from Homeworld. It just, the images of being dragged back to Homeworld again just start to flood her mind. Because, if Homeworld finds Peirdot, they're not going to stop there. They're not just going to be like, oh, hey, we're here to collect Peirdot, bye. No, if they find other Homeworld gems there, they're probably going to shackle and take them back as well. So it might have personal investment, too. So she's just like, no, not having this. I've done enough of dealing with Homeworld for right now. Slap.
It's just comical again. It's just like, and then boom, and when it hits the earth, it gets buried halfway in, and these diamond-shaped explosion patterns come out, which we've seen before. Particularly, I remember at the moment when Steven pulled the gem from the mirror. This big pattern appeared on the ground that the water was drawn into. And talking back to those reference sheets, that pattern was in one of those reference sheets.
Oh yeah.
So it was important that it looked like this.
Yeah, the 4 diamond / 3 triangle / the other iterations on that insignia is obviously very important to Homeworld. It's almost synonymous with the location itself, including the communicator that Peirdot has in Message Received. It is actually made out of 4 colored triangles.
Yeah, the episode where she calls Yellow Diamond.
Yeah. Is made out of 4 colored triangles, pink, white, yellow, and blue. And I believe you had said before that when she tosses it and it explodes, it also makes that diamond pattern.
Yeah.
So
Steven bubbles it, and then Garnet throws it. Yeah, punches it. Boom! In a diamond shape.
Yeah. And
is control over shape a thing? Just like with the watermelon Stevens that break into perfectly cut watermelon slices, it could just be a cartoon goofy thing. I think that's
mostly just for a cutesy purpose, but I think that, again, they really want to drive home that this diamond shape thing, that the Diamond Authority...
The diamond thing from the Diamond Authority, from the Diamond Run world, is shaped like a diamond because, yes. So then, in come the crystal gems. We just got here. What's going on? Oh. Holy smokes. Yes. Again, I think Peirdot's imprinting a lot on Amethyst. Now, that was a little unintentional, but Peirdot says, holy smokes. They run in. Amethyst says, holy smokes. Okay. And Steven explains, Lapis did it. And then we get the payoff moment.
Yes.
We get Peirdot. And she turns around, and she's all scared because she doesn't know what's going to happen now. Because the last thing that Lapis said to her was, get out.
Yeah.
And then she's like, are you okay? And the biggest, goofiest you smile I've ever seen.
Literally from eye to eye, ear to ear smile. Just
with dimples and everything. It was just like, whoa, okay. Okay.
Like Gerber baby smile. Just so saccharine.
But the episode was not done with us yet.
Oh no, because the hatch opens up from the roaming eye, and when you have no idea, no potential thought for what could possibly escape from this thing, whether it's going to be like a bomb or if it's going to be...
I honestly thought it was going to be another Jasper.
Oh, that would have been crazy. Especially since if a Jasper stepped out, it would be like, oh no. But no, we are greeted with another ruby.
Right. And 2 emotions immediately come to me when I see this. One is like, yay, it's a ruby. Rubies are kind of cute, And oh no, it's a ruby. And they're fiery, literally, and very combative and everything like that. So this person's not here just to figure out what's going on. This thing's here to whoop some butt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it does have a very intimidating visage with its eye patch of a ruby.
That makes it look like it's a pirate or something. And the gem placement, I mean, we've seen a sum total now of like 5 different rubies throughout the series.
Yeah.
All of them with the gems in different spots.
Places, yeah.
And right on the eye has got to be one of the weirdest places.
Yeah, especially since gems tend to pull their weapons from their gem. I can only imagine, like, the ruby punches itself in the eye so that its fist goes, like, into its eye, and then it pulls out the gauntlet or something.
Okay, that's disturbing. But,
do all gems have the same weapon? I don't think that's also been...
In the answer, we didn't see those rubies do anything but fuse together.
And then Rose cuts them apart.
Yeah. So, yeah, we don't know. Again, I don't know if that weapon manifesting ability could be a quartz level and higher ability that Rose taught to them.
Yeah.
And maybe, like I can imagine, maybe we'll get another history lesson at some point. Yeah. And there's Rose, who has already taught Pearl to manifest the spear from her gem, trying to get Garnet to do that, and realizing that there's a gem in each hand would be like, you know what? Gauntlets would be like the perfect thing.
Wouldn't it be weird if Sapphire just innately had a gauntlet? Because that doesn't seem like a
work. Yeah. So I think the very first The Cookie Cat episode was all about the gems manifesting their weapons.
Yeah.
So it is a thing, but I think, especially since it's the note that they end the episode on, having this ruby show up and then have this kind of more intimidating looking eye patch thing makes it like, oh man, this ruby means business. This isn't going to be like our ruby, who it might be hot tempered, but can still be like reasoned with. Oh no, this one's going to be all business.
Yeah.
And end of episode. Well, crap.
Yeah. I mean, if there's one thing the show knows how to do appropriately, it's cliffhangers. And again, to avoid anybody from getting spoiled, we are not going to talk about what happens in the next few episodes, despite the fact that we've seen them. But I am very excited to talk about the next episode.
Yes, we've done our level best to keep this discussion spoiler-free.
Yes.
And from the point of view of only having seen up to Barnmates.
Yes.
So we can talk later about Hit the Diamond.
Yes. And again, I think that is really about it for today. Did you have any other closing comments you wanted to make?
Only that what I'm looking to get out of this episode, as far as its impact on the series, is I want to see how much Lapis has changed from the events of this episode.
Yeah.
The next time that we see Lapis or Lapis and Peirdot together, has this episode had a big impact? Or was Lapis just protecting Steven, or was she only stepping up because the emergency of the situation demanded it?
I do think it would be a little too soon for Lapis to convert immediately after this episode. I think that we're starting to see the pun unintentional cracks in Lapis's demeanor, but I still think it's going to take some time. And again, if I may reach, I still think it's going to be them learning to fuse that's going to finally show them how compatible they are, or how similar their situation is.
So, in your opinion, I know the phrase Lapidot is thrown around, but that's like a ship name, right?
Not nearly enough, but go on.
What actual gemstone do you think their fusion would be?
Aquamarine.
I like that.
That's
I think
my,
it makes sense.
My headcanon, as it were.
If opal wasn't already taken, I would think that, because opals have water trapped inside them.
Yeah, but I think that Aquamarine would make for a good name for Peirdot and Lapis's fusion. I can't really think of any others that are very appropriate, because turquoise also comes to mind.
It does, just because the green and blue combination gives you that something in the cyan area. I can imagine the skin tone of the fusion being somewhat cyan.
Yeah.
The only other major type of gemstone that I can think of right now that hasn't been represented at all is topaz. Now,
yes.
Topaz are traditionally yellow in color. Mm-hmm. However, blue topaz do exist.
If I were to posit any topaz as a character, I think that would be Pearl and Peirdot fused.
Ooh, that sounds interesting, yeah. Oh, and there's also Emerald.
Yeah. I imagine Emerald would probably be its own character, like its standalone gem.
I'm no gemologist, but I think Emerald is another one of those gemstones that's a quartz structure with a different element trapped inside of it to give it the green color. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it could be, if we're going by that, all this meta knowledge, then it would be another warrior style gem. And I mean, Peirdot being green, and not to mention my own personal birthstone, actually. Little aside, I was initially a little miffed that, my birthstone shows up and it's a villain. I like the character, but it was still a villain.
Yeah.
Well, I'm vindicated now.
Yes. Well, my birthstone is a fusion, the first fusion we see, actually. Yeah. And while she is a lot of people's favorite fusions, she's not mine. And so Sardonyx is still holding that place until Lapidot. But I think this conversation has come full circle.
Yep. We will be back next week to talk about the episode Hit the Diamond.
Yes. But until then, thank you guys so much for stopping by. If you want to get in contact with us, let us know what you think. If you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like us to talk about, you can contact us at gemtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Until then, see you guys next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.